pre-roll for the opening night of Feast of Tabernacles 2017. Oh boy, is this going to be fun tonight. We're going to be streaming live on Facebook Live and simulcasting on Sabbath.tv tonight. And I think we're ready. Let's get the ball rolling. Greetings to those of you watching on Sabbath.tv. This is the opening night for the Feast of Tabernacles. I got to say that again. Hold on a second. Let me roll over here. Let me get this live stream on Facebook Live activated, and I'll tell everybody at the same time. Greetings to those of you watching on Facebook Live, and again to those of you on Sabbath.tv. This is the opening night of the Feast of Tabernacles 2017. So, Chag Sameach, welcome everyone. Happy Feast of Tabernacles. We're going to be live streaming all through the feast. You know, I've stayed back to be able to do that, brethren. If I figure out some way to be able to do all the things we want to do on the streaming and take it on a laptop with me, or 3 or 4 laptops somehow, maybe I can go somewhere. But I'll be moving out to a trailer back behind the studio so that I have temporary a tabernacle, a tabernacle. We used to build that thing in Pasadena every year, me and one other fellow. It was our job each year to build the sukkah. So I'll be in my little sukkah out back, but staying basically near the studio. Instead of my bedroom down the hall, I'll be out back in the pasture with the horse and the goat and the donkey and in a little trailer back there. I'm looking forward to it. This will be fun. And we're going to open tonight. Brethren, you ready? Something God's end-time apostle Herbert Armstrong asked us to do. And that's during the feast, he asked us to watch, during one of the feasts, and we're going to follow the principle of that this year, he asked us to watch the Behind the Work film. And I've got that for you tonight. What a great way to open up. This is Wednesday night, October 4. It's the 15th day of 27. Let me back up. It's the 4th day of October 2017 on the pagan Roman calendar. I usually do the Hebrew calendar first. It's the 15th day of the 7th month on God's holy sacred calendar, as you can see on the lower third below us down here. And it'll even after, from now, it's evening, it's after sunset, from now until before and after midnight, it will still be the 15th day of the 7th month. It's only man that messes up what God designed. God designed days to begin at sunset, at the setting of the sun. When the last little peak of the sun is below the horizon, that is the setting of the sun. Yeah, I know some of you claim it sets all afternoon. But there's a technical sunset time, and it's after the last little peak of the sun is below the horizon. That is, the sun has set. And that's the beginning of a new day. Boom, at that moment. And so it's the 15th of the 7th month tonight, Wednesday night on the pagan Roman calendar. It's still the 5th day of the week. From sunset on, it's the 5th day of the week. But on man's system, it's Wednesday night. Tomorrow it'll be Thursday, Thor's Day. That's the name of an old god named Thor. But it'll still be the 15th day of the 7th month, the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles. And we'll have service tomorrow at the regular Sabbath times, morning and afternoon, and we'll have a little Bible study, and we're going to do the Behind the Work film tonight. Let's get right into it. I'll be back. We'll sing some hymns together at the end of this. Brethren, as Mr. Armstrong asked us to do during the feast, here we're going to this Behind the Work film.
Over 4,000 years ago, God made a promise to the faithful patriarch Abraham. Because Abraham had obeyed him, God would raise up from him a chosen people who would become a model nation. If they would be faithful and obey God, he would bless them above all the nations of the earth. God kept his promise. He brought the descendants of Abraham's grandson, Israel, out of slavery in Egypt and revealed to them a way of life, 10 great commandments. and laws, statutes, and judgments that would allow them to live in peace and safety in the promised land. The chosen people rose to the peak of their power and influence in the days of King Solomon. But after his death, they split into two, a northern kingdom of Israel, dominated by the descendants of Israel's son Joseph, and the southern kingdom of Judah. And they forgot their God. The northern kingdom continued for 2.5 centuries, sinking ever further into idolatry until in the 8th century B.C., God allowed his people to be conquered and taken into captivity by the armies of the Assyrian Empire. The southern kingdom struggled on for 120 more years, but eventually, ignoring the warnings of the great prophets, Judah suffered the same fate. In 585 B.C., Jerusalem fell to the Babylonian emperor Nebuchadnezzar, and the inhabitants of Judah were led into exile. Jerusalem was in ruin, and the promised land laid waste. It seemed as if the promise had been broken. But God had not forgotten his people or his plans. In Babylon, a young Jewish captive, Daniel, is summoned before Nebuchadnezzar to interpret a strange dream that had troubled the Babylonian emperor.
You, O king, were watching, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome. This image's head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You watched while a stone was cut out without hands, which struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. And the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth.
Then Daniel explained the meaning of Nebuchadnezzar's dream.
You, O king, are a king of kings, for the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory. You are this head of gold. But after you shall arise another kingdom, inferior to yours. Then another, a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron. And like iron that crushes, that kingdom will break in pieces and crush all the others. Whereas you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. Yet the strength of the iron shall be in it. So the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly fragile, just as iron does not mix with clay. And in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever.
In one startling prophecy, God had outlined the course of world events for thousands of years into the future. During the next few years, God continued to give Daniel details of the 4 great empires that would dominate history. After a startling dream, Daniel awoke to write down the frightening revelation.
I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and 4 great beasts came up from the sea, each different from the other. The first was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. I watched till its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And suddenly, another beast, a second, like a bear. It was raised up on one side, and had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. And they said thus to it, Arise, devour much flesh. After this I looked, and there was another, like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night vision, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its teeth. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns.
Daniel laid a foundation, but he was not given full understanding. That would not come until many centuries had passed, and the world was in the tumultuous age spoken of in prophecy as the time of the end. When that time came, God would raise up another servant who would take a message to all the world, a world on the brink of destruction.
I come to you as an unofficial ambassador for peace. Armies do not bring peace to a country. We have not learned the way to peace. Yesterday, I was having a meeting with some of the officials of your country, and there was considerable discussion about the plans for the unification of Europe. And as one of your officials said, world peace depends upon European unification. I want to tell you something more about the coming unification of Europe. We not only have language barriers between the nations and nationalism, different aspirations, and all that sort of thing, and differences which have to be overcome, but many of the political leaders feel that they do not want to be church-dominated. And yet, they're not going to be able to get together without the cohesiveness of church domination and the church bringing them all together. You see, even the church is divided between East and West. I can tell you, however, that I fully believe that rift is going to be healed. And I fully believe that unification will be unexpectedly and suddenly achieved, and the whole world is going to be stunned and astounded when it is announced that there is, in the continent of Europe, a new political unification, a nation as great or greater than the Soviet Union or the United States of America.
Many listen respectfully, but they do not believe. The old nations of Europe are tired of war. They seek unification only for peaceful purposes. It is a bold dream, but the prophecies show that the union of the nations in Europe will result not in peace, but in the most terrible instrument of destruction the world has ever seen. The course of a united Europe was charted long ago in the days of the prophet Daniel, when the destiny of this world passed into the hands of 4 world-ruling empires. Daniel had seen 4 beasts representing those empires.
Then I wished to know the truth about the 4th beast. Thus he said, The 4th beast shall be a 4th kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all other kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, trample it, and break it in pieces. The 10 horns are 10 kings who shall arise from this kingdom.
And so God revealed that the 4th beast represented the 4th empire, which would continue in one form or another to the time of the end. Babylon fell to the Persian Empire in the 6th century B.C. The Persians ruled the world for 2 centuries, until 333 B.C., when the armies of Alexander destroyed Persia's power. This third empire, like unto a leopard, endured for nearly 3 more centuries before falling to the might of the Romans. And so, in 31 B.C., the fourth beast was born as an empire, a power that would influence the affairs of the world until the second coming of Jesus Christ rescues mankind from its clutches. It was in the heyday of the first stage of the Roman Empire that Jesus Christ revealed the final details of its role in world history. On the Mediterranean island of Patmos, the elderly apostle John received the visions recorded in the Apocalypse or Book of Revelation. He saw in vivid detail a cataclysmic war that would take place at the end of the age. Against this backdrop of mayhem and destruction, John saw once again the savage beasts of Daniel's vision, now combined into one all-consuming monster.
Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his head a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. And all the world marveled and followed the beast. So they worshiped the dragon who gave authority to the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast? And who is able to make war with him?"
Here then is the beast of fiercest proportion, the majesty of Babylon, the relentless force of Persia, the speed of the 4-headed leopard of Greece, all combined to produce the formidable military might of the Romans. The 10 horns represent 10 governments to be formed from this beast, for it would arise again and again, casting its terrible shadow across nearly 1,600 years of history. The old Roman Empire fell in A.D. 476. 3 kingdoms supplanted it: the Vandals, the Heruli, and the Ostrogoths. Then the Emperor Justinian restored the power of Imperial Rome in A.D. 554, as symbolized by the 4th horn of the beast. In A.D. 800, Charlemagne was crowned by the Pope on Christmas Day as a successor to the throne of Rome. In 962, the 6th horn became known as the Holy Roman Empire of the German nation, when Pope John XII crowned Otto the Great. Then in 1530, the Habsburg dynasty reached the apex of its power when the Pope crowned Charles V as the Holy Roman Emperor. This dynastic 7th horn lasted until it was overthrown by Napoleon, who, seizing the crown from the hands of the Pope, crowned himself emperor. Napoleon's short reign ended in 1814, a date recognized in history as the end of a government that lasted 1,260 years from the restoration of the Roman Empire in the West by Justinian. But the beast was not dead. By 1870, Garibaldi's efforts led to a united Italy, thus beginning a chain of events that resulted in the formation of the 9th government to arise out of the Roman Empire. In 1923, the fascists under Mussolini had already come to power in Rome. Meanwhile, an attempt by the Nazi Party to take over the German government was thwarted. But 10 years later, Hitler did rise to power, and his Third Reich was soon to lunge out at Europe and hold it captive for 5 nightmare years. Hitler drew inspiration from ancient Rome. Even his architecture was inspired by the styles of the Caesars. Before this 9th fearsome horn of the Roman Empire had been crushed in the ruins of fascism and the Third Reich, much of Europe had been reduced to rubble. 40 years later, there is little left to remind the visitors of the ravages of war. The place where Hitler once goaded his people into frenzy is now a park where old people stroll and children play. Close by, the review stand at Zeppelin Field, where the legions of the Third Reich paraded before their Fuhrer, is now in ruins.
Hände gebe, diesen Tag noch gibt.
But it is not the end. The terrible beast must appear once more for a final rampage of destruction. The prophecies show that 10 nations, or group of nations in Europe, will join their economic, military, and political forces. It will be a fragile union, iron mixed with miry clay. But old rivalries and quarrels will be suspended for a time, held together by a common need and a common faith. These nations will become a third superpower. It may at first seem to be a peaceful union, but the Bible reveals the true nature that lies beneath the surface. Goaded into action, the beast will wreak havoc on the earth. The armies of the beast will lash out, laying waste the modern-day descendants of the ancient house of Israel. Then the beast turns in its rage on the nations of the east. Finally, powerful armies gather to fight a climactic battle for Jerusalem. So great is the fury, so awful the weapons, that humanity teeters on the brink of destroying all flesh, man and animals alike, from off the earth. Only the intervention of God can save humanity, and God does intervene. Jesus Christ returns to earth in power and glory, stopping the fighting, subduing the adversaries, rescuing his chosen people from cruel tribulation. Then this world, this civilization that has known so much misery and destruction, will be over. Jesus Christ will establish his kingdom on the earth, which will lead the world into 1,000 years of peace. Leaders of nations will come to this kingdom, eager to be taught the way that leads to peace. They will come to a tranquil land, developing in happiness and prosperity, living in harmony with God and his laws. Many then will remember that in the last days of that past civilization, an ambassador of this kingdom came to them with the advanced news of a peaceful world tomorrow.
And I'm here to announce to you tonight that God is going to let this world come crashing down. But it's going to be replaced with a far better world that'll be filled with love and with peace and joy and happiness and with greater production by far than anything we've dreamed of having yet, and where everybody will be well educated and rightly and properly educated. I feel the responsibility, and a voice has to cry out in this wilderness of religious confusion, this wilderness of a Babylon of ideas, and everybody having different ideas and everybody against everybody else. Someone has to cry out with that message and announce what is going to happen, as certain as the sun is going to rise and set tomorrow. Now, I know you haven't heard anything said like this before, but I have been sent here by that eternal living Creator God, the God over all races and all people and all nations, to tell you the truth, which missionaries of us failed to tell you, which religions have not known and have not been able to tell you, which the colleges and universities do not teach, which science doesn't even understand. But you have been told tonight.
Brother, I don't know about you, but that sends chill bumps up and down my spine. Hey, brethren, I'm going to, because I don't know what this guy's going to say next. That was me speaking either last year or 2 years ago. I forget which now, when we played this very special video, opening night video for, actually I played it then about the third day of the feast for, I've been 2 years ago, 2015. But as I was saying that, it still brings chill bumps up and down my spine as I watched it again tonight. You know, I had the privilege of working for a couple of years in the television studio. I had worked in television at 3 different television stations in Florida before coming to college, and so I sent my resume in, and Mr. Norman Smith hired me to work in television studio. And I would work there off and on even after I was became an instructor at Ambassador College and did a number of different things. But that was a very well put together video, and I hope you enjoyed seeing that tonight on the opening night for the feast for 2017, at a time when the body of Christ, also known as the Church of God, is scattered worldwide. I was going to say widely scattered, but I thought a cool way to say it would be to say scattered worldwide. You know, in Acts 8, where God talks about the Ephesian era being a church that was scattered, the reference there, as it's rendered in the King James Version, in Acts 8, starting at verse 1, and then again I think in verse 4, the reference to the church of God at that time is the church of God scattered abroad. And the word that's rendered as abroad, scattered abroad, can be rendered scattered worldwide. I thought, since generically the Philadelphia era was known by the corporate name, Worldwide Church of God, for some time, I thought, well, right here in verse 1, it says scattered abroad. A good way to reference that, since it can be rendered as scattered worldwide, is to say it that way. The Church of God scattered worldwide throughout. Now, at that time, it was throughout the regions of Judea and Samaria, except the apostles. They weren't scattered, and they were wound up being taken and put in jails oftentimes, and they were martyred, all of them except the Apostle John. And where does it mention that reference again? It mentions scattered abroad, scattered worldwide in verse 1 of Acts 8. And then later in the chapter, it's going to make that same reference to being scattered abroad or scattered worldwide again. And I think that applies to us today. God has allowed us to be scattered worldwide. Now, there have been some ministers who've started groups, which I call banana peeling Church of God groups, because, you know, there's one church, one body, as God tells us. Christ saying in Matthew 16:18, I will build my church. And as God's end-time apostle Herbert Armstrong has emphasized, it's not churches, but church. Now, you know what I'm going to do, because we caught that poor fellow there with a funny look on his face, his mouth wide open, or at least partially open. I'm going to advance this to a song, a hymn we can sing together, brethren, so that no matter, during this feast, no matter where brethren are, you know, the church is not a building, it's not an organization, Mr. Armstrong told us that none of us were even members of the non-member corporation called the Worldwide Church of God. He played a little trick on brother and said, how many of you members of the Worldwide Church of God? Raise your hands. Oh, come on, put them up high now. If you're a member of the Worldwide Church of God, get them up high. And so, wow, people raised them up higher, and some who hadn't raised their hand at all said, well, I better get my hand up. I don't know what people may have been thinking. Oh, maybe he's about to say we're about to head off on those two wings of a great eagle, and if we're members, we get to go. But so some who didn't have their hands raised, they shove them on up high too. And he took a good look around in the audience, and then he said he was looking for any of his council of elders or those who were on the board of directors, and he said, everybody, put your hands down. All the boards of directors must have been off speaking somewhere else. He said, everybody who's got your hands up, put your hands down. He said, none of you here. And he was speaking from the headquarters auditorium, the Ambassador Auditorium, on a Sabbath. I was ushering that day, and from the front, I got to look back and see who all had their hands up and who didn't. I didn't raise mine. I didn't know exactly what he was up to, but I knew he was up to something. And he said, everybody who's got your hands up, put your hands down. None of you are members of the Worldwide Church of God. He said it is a non-member corporation in its articles, bylaws. And he said only if you are one of the 12 board of directors are you a member of the Worldwide Church of God. And he wanted us to get something out of that. He went on and elucidated it and said, brethren, what you are is, he said, when you were baptized, you were not baptized into any denomination or organization of men, or any group. You were baptized into the body of Jesus Christ. And he said, that is the Church of God, a spiritual organism. The Church of God, brethren, is you and me, not any building, not any organization, association, corporation, LLC, any type. It's not any type of business entity or formation or association of any kind. It's you and me as members of the body of Jesus Christ, a spiritual organism, not a physical organization. Now that's what God's end-time apostle himself told us. Some may never have heard that, and if you haven't, and now you've heard it, and you've got brethren around you who haven't heard it, you now have a responsibility on you to pass that on to them. Just as I have a responsibility, having heard God's end-time apostle directly say that. I haven't been able to find a recording, but I was there in person. And of course, I wasn't the only one present. There was about 1,000 people there when he did that. And many of them, I bet if I ask, hey, if you were there that night and you were one of them that raised your hands, how did you feel when Mr. Armstrong said, put your hands down. None of you who've got your hands up are members of the Worldwide Church of God. Did you nearly fall out of your seat? Did you wonder, what did I do wrong? Or did you wonder, well, what is he saying to us? There's something going on here. And he wanted us to get a point. It's too bad. It seems like maybe even some ministers haven't heard that or didn't get the point or something as they ran out and started this banana peeling and that banana peeling Church of God group here and there and everywhere. Mr. Armstrong said we were not even members of the Worldwide Church of God, a corporate entity that was the arm of the spiritual body of Jesus Christ for its physical assets and its employment operations, etc., while we were basically one body, undivided. Now we're, thanks to a lot of you ministers out there, we're divided up into little flocks and groups here and there and everywhere, and some people won't cross the street to go where there's another flock or fold because I'm a member of this blankety-blank banana-peeling Church of God group. All right, but there are people, Brethren, I'm happy for those of you who have an opportunity to fellowship. Even, I'll just say, even this much. You know, regardless of how it is right now, fellowship is wonderful. I am looking forward very much, after I speak to you on a live stream in the morning, being able to run over to a local nursing home where one of our 50-year, long time, more than 50 years now ago, she came in the Church of God Birmingham congregation back in the early 60s. And so how many years is that now? To 70, 80, 90, 2000, 2010. It's about 55 years ago. Kathleen Williams, who everybody in Birmingham and Alabama knows as Kat. Some even don't even know her full name because they've heard her called by her nickname, and she would be very involved in things and services and would be very encouraging to brethren and be at all the fellowships and helping set it up, helping take it down, just helping brethren and enthusiastic about it. And now she's 80 years old this year, and she's locked in the geriatric section of a nursing home, and she can't get out. Now, I did get permission to take her out, but somebody nipped that in the bud on me on atonement. Somebody who has family guardianship over a young person. And unfortunately, I think it started out as her twin sister. But then her twin sister, the nursing people are telling me, her twin sister has become very confused. And so now one of the other family members has control. And when the hospital was going to let me take Kathleen Williams over to fellowship with a combined service that two groups were having on atonement. They do it on the fifth Sabbath of the month, which comes up twice a year. They combine. And it's where Kat used to go. And it's a lot of brethren who would have known her more intimately. And I thought it would be very uplifting for her. The brethren themselves would enjoy seeing her. Many people can't. They live in far places with their jobs. They just can't get over to the nursing home before the visiting hours are over in the evening at 7 o'clock. Because of their jobs and what have you. I thought, well, we'll get Kathy to where they are and surprise everybody. And I went to that congregation and I announced to them what happened and asked for their prayers. Came back, Kat and I had a wonderful time together the rest of atonement. Kat sang more enthusiastically than on days when you can eat food. And so I'm looking forward to seeing her tomorrow. I'll do some fellowship during this feast with Kat, probably every day. I wish I could take her out to some of the nicer restaurants around town, but what I'll try to do is get some of the nicest ice cream you can get, and cherries and blueberries and nuts and chocolate and what have you. And I think I threw my bag away already. I got myself, yeah, I did. I just ate the whole bag. I only allow myself, brethren, to have Reese cups, peanut butter cups. Actually, I only allow myself to do that once a year during the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, I found some at the local health-like store that are made by Chakor Doodle. I don't forget the name. It's not Reese, though, but they are peanut butter cups, and they're all natural. They even have sea salt in them and no artificial anything. So I actually found some healthy ones, but I'm still only going to eat those once a year. Because otherwise I'll pick... I start eating those things, I hardly stop. And so I just ate a whole bag tonight, and I've got another bag to go yet. And I had those with some Journey to France sparkling lemonade that just made those. I've only drank a little bit of this. Now, this is not hard cider, this is not hard lemonade. This is just lemonade. It's all naturally flavored. It's also, good stuff in there, except probably the sugar. But the lemon and the carbonated water, I love this. Goes great with those Reese cups. And this is feast time, so we do cool stuff like this during a feast. I'll bring some good stuff. I already got some chocolates for Kat for tomorrow. I'll bring those over to her. And if you'll be praying about it, it'd be nice if God softened the heart of that family member. And as I mentioned to her, I'd like to take her over to this nice restaurant. This is one of our festival weeks, and and I'll be responsible to get her back here, and I'll pay for her meal. And it'd be nice if, that person that has that string tying control over her would say, not something I'm going to do all the time, but on something special like the feast or a holy day. Be able to, that family members twice this year, when Kat turned 80 along with her twin sister, and then one other time they took her out to dinner. And so before that, the nursing home was telling me, she always has to have a nurse with her, even if she leaves this section to go to another section. So she can't leave this section unless we can have a nurse with her. But they let the family take her out without a nurse, and when I knew that, I caught them on that, and I was kind about it. And they said, "Boy, yeah, you can take her out as long as the family member that's got the guardianship over her, sponsorship over her, doesn't say no." And they called her, and she said no. So that nipped that, and Kat was very saddened by that. But I went away, saw the church brethren where she would have gone for fellowship, and asked them to pray about it. I came back. God poured out his Spirit, and Kat sang more happily than ever, and we just had a nice time. We'll do some of that, as I said, during this feast. Brethren, let's sing one together before we close up this opening night tonight, just to get the feast kicked off, to let those of you who are either staying home or if you are going somewhere and you want to tune in with us, we're going to do some special stuff on Sabbath.tv during this Feast of Tabernacles 2017. And we'll probably cross-stream it on Facebook Live on the Sabbath service page as well, as we are doing tonight. But for the opening night, brethren, let's kick it off, what do you say, with one of the psalms written by Mr. Herbert Armstrong's brother, Dwight Armstrong, that is among one of a few hymns that's recommended for holy days. And this first day of the Feast of Tabernacles is a holy day. So let me get that lower third out of the way. And we got the chorale arrangement with this hymn, and let's all sing it together. I'll cut my mic off so you won't hear me in the background. Well, maybe I'll come in once in a while, but let's all sing it together from Psalm number 9. It's page 9 in the purple hymnal. If you've got a blue, you got a blue hymnal, it's page 29. It's not in the original gray hymnal. But you don't even need a hymnal. We got the words that are going to be scrolling on screen for you as the music and the plays and the chorale sings along. So let's roll this. Let's all sing together. Psalm 9, declare his works to all nations. Women only, it says here. All right, men, let's kick in. brethren, thank you for singing along. We're going to stop right there and close up tonight's opening night service for Feast of Tabernacles 2017 here from cogtv.org on the Sabbath.tv channel and from the Facebook Live Sabbath service page. That's it for this Wednesday evening, this opening night Feast of Tabernacles service for 2017, this being the 15th day of the 7th month after sunset in the evening. Opening night, Feast of Tabernacles 2017. Those of you who can and will plan to be with us through the rest of the feast, and we're going to keep these, God willing, we're going to keep the live streams going all through the feast on Sabbath.tv every day and on the Sabbath service page on Facebook Live. Brethren, Chag happy Feast of Tabernacles 2017. Glad you could join me here. Thank you for being here with me until the morning. Your host, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth, for Feast of Tabernacles 2017. Happy Feast. Chag Happy Feast 2017.